Gettysburg isn't just sacred American ground. It might be the most haunted battlefield in the world. And the strangest thing is that the activity isn't fading with time, it's growing.
Wow. Yeah, it's always been a very interesting battle, and the ghost stories are just equally as interesting. I'm excited to get into it.
Absolutely. And as we know, like the Battle of Gettysburg wasn't just a turning point in the American Civil War. It was an event of like staggering human suffering compressed into three violent days, right? July 1st through the July 3rd, 1863. And during those 3 days, more than 160,000 troops clashed in this massive battle in this Pennsylvania town. Over 50,000 of those men were killed, wounded, or just disappeared, leaving behind a landscape that is soaked in trauma, confusion, unimaginable suffering, and unfinished stories. Thousands died where they fell. Many laid unburied for days in the summer heat. Civilians, school teachers, farmers, shopkeepers found their homes turned into medical stations, overflowing with wounded and dying men. Surgeons worked around the clock in makeshift hospitals, performing amputations without anesthesia, stacking limbs outside like firewood. That combination of sudden death, mass trauma, fear, confusion, and the lack of closure for so many really create a perfect storm for persistent paranormal phenomena. Gettysburg isn't just subtly haunted. It is a place where the past intrudes into the present with startling frequency.
Yeah, it's definitely, if you guys have ever been there, or if you want to go, it's awesome to check it out. It's crazy to think of how pivotal it was to the nation we live in today. Whoever won that battle pretty much had the war. So it was there was high emotion. It was and I guess some of it carried over to today. And there's actually several locations where the paranormal activity is more intense, and one of those would be the Devil's Den, which just starting out at like to talk about the main sighting that people have there. It's actually the shoeless soldier. Multiple people have reported uh, seeing him clear as day. He shows up to help travelers if they're lost, or point them in the right direction, or just stop to, I guess, greet them. And they say he's not wearing shoes. That's why he's called the shoeless soldier. And they also say he appears to be in a Confederate uniform. So he was most likely a Confederate soldier that fell at the Devil's Den during the fighting.
The most interesting thing to me about all of these sightings and everything that are coming out of Gettysburg is that, I mean, there are hundreds or thousands of independent reports of different apparitions, noises, things in the dark. But every report that I've read that indicates that an apparition or something like actually spoke with someone or approached them or moved is like in a friendly way. Like there hasn't been, at least that I found, any like reports of malevolent spirits there, which is crazy to me given all the trauma and history there. You think that there'd be like a sense of anger or something that just lingers on that battlefield, but it doesn't seem to be the case. Like your shoeless soldier, um, he's been known or reported to come up to people very briefly and just say, "What you're looking for is over there," pointing towards the den and then vanishing. Like it's
Yeah, it's
interesting to me that there's nothing there that's angry or trying to cause harm to people. Everything's kind of friendly. It's almost like the ghosts themselves are the tour guides at this historical landmark.
yeah, it's actually pretty interesting. I was able to find some more malevolent stuff, but it was more associated with like inside of buildings. But yeah, it's interesting,
Mm.
like what you're saying, like on the battlefield, it seems like all of these ghosts that died in the middle of fighting just want to be helpful, want to talk to people, want to come up to people. So it is very interesting that you don't have anything like scary out there.
Yeah, they just want to tell their story, it seems like. And the Devil's Den itself, for those that don't know, is basically just a massive jumble of boulders that formed kind of this natural fortress during the battle. This specific battle took place on July 2nd, and it saw some of the most chaotic and brutal fighting of the entire conflict. Confederate sharpshooters used elevated rock positions to pick off Union soldiers marching across the valley, and many men died like wedged between these rocks, their bodies unable to be recovered for several days. The terrain itself made it feel like a maze because it's on this hill and there's boulders, and you're having to weave your way in to get to, any sort of position where you can engage the other side. And it led to a lot of hand-to-hand fighting, and that's ultimately what led to it being called the Devil's Den, was because how gruesome it was due to the terrain and how close most of the combat was.
Yeah, it was brutal. If you watch the Gettysburg movie, one of the generals, he actually says they don't even have to shoot; they just roll rocks down on us.
Yeah, yeah. Can
And
you imagine
actually,
just being crushed by a boulder?
no, that would be terrible. Like it seems worse than just getting shot. But that's actually one thing that some people do kind of get, I guess, get scared by at the Devil's Den is they actually do have reports there of when you're like walking through it, just all of a sudden out of nowhere, gunfire. You'll start hearing gunfire, cannons going off, people screaming like they're being killed. So there is also some stuff there that can catch you off guard if you don't know it's coming.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's an interesting site to check out for sure. Um, that was I can't even imagine trying to fight there with the technology and stuff that they didn't have back then. Just not even paranormal, like just fighting a battle in that type of terrain in what amounts to like a wool suit and a stick that shoots a ball.
Yeah, no, it had to be horrid fighting conditions. Um, But yeah, another one I found. There are reports if you go to the Devil's Den of seeing Union soldiers moving through the rocks. So you'll be there, and all of a sudden you look up, and there's Union soldiers just moving into position amongst the rocks. So that would be another pretty cool one to see.
Yeah, and people report like feeling like they go on like a summer day as a tour, right? And as they're walking around this Devil's Den, a sudden cold wind starts coming through the crevices and the rocks and everything, which, as we know, like cold temperatures are very indicative of some kind of paranormal activity, especially when the ambient temperature around you is warm, like a summer day, right? So that's kind of crazy too.
Yeah, that's like a lot that actually goes on in that location. And that's just one location.
Yeah, and this whole battlefield is plagued with locations like this. Another one is Little Round Top, right? So it was another piece of critical terrain that if the Confederate soldiers had taken, would have rolled up the entire Union line and changed the course of the entire war.
Hmm.
Um, this was basically a hill, a vantage point that the Union was using as kind of the staging point to engage Confederate soldiers, and the Confederates wanted it real bad. This battle occurred on July 2nd as well, where the Union's 20th Maine, under Colonel Joshua Chamberlain, found themselves defending against overwhelming enemy numbers. They were low on ammo, and they faced just wave after wave of Confederate assault. It again turned to close range volleys, bayonet thrusts, men wrestling on rocky slopes on this hill. When ammunition ran dry, Chamberlain famously ordered a bayonet charge downhill, catching the Confederates off balance and pushing them back. So that hill was held, but it was at a terrible cost.
Yeah, and a lot of people actually credit him with saving the Union because if the Confederates had been able to overrun them on Little Round Top, they would have been behind the flank of the Union Army. And if they had won at Gettysburg, there were no more Union armies between the Confederate Army and Washington, D.C.
Yeah. Yeah, it would have been game over, roll credits at that point.
So
But
that's huge.
oh yeah, for sure. And it's actually one of the most famously reported sites for full-bodied apparitions. There at Little Round Top, like solid-looking soldiers in Union uniforms walking the ridgeline, adjusting equipment, or just appearing to still be on patrol. Visitors have often approached them believing they're reenactors. I mean, these are like full-bodied apparitions that look like real people, not some ghostly images. And that's a consistent theme around Gettysburg, is that, you know, these sounds of gunfire, soldiers walking around in uniforms. A lot of people think that they're reenactors because they do some reenacting there to show people what the battles were actually like. So a lot of ghosts are confused for reenactors, and then when somebody goes to approach them to ask a question or comment on their performance, they vanish.
Wow. That would be awesome. I gotta
And
go
park
back.
rangers, yeah, I've never been. I would love to take a trip. It's actually on my bucket list, right? Is to like rent an RV and go tour all of the major Civil War battlefields. Um,
That's actually
with
what we
you
did.
know, yeah, I mean that'd be a great trip. So especially now that leaning into this paranormal side, like it's a whole different side of history that you can look into, right?
Mhm.
That you can talk to park rangers here that consistently report hearing gunshots, seeing reenactors walking around day and night, and then when they go to investigate, there's nothing there. People complain. Actually, people have complained to the park rangers about reenactors walking in their photos, and there's no reenactors that day.
They got a better photo than they thought they were gonna get.
I know exactly.
That's pretty
But
crazy.
again, the ghosts and the apparitions around Gettysburg is they appear aware, like I talked about a little earlier with them being friendly and like going up and talking to people, you know, very briefly. They're aware of the visitor's presence. They'll turn and look at them, they'll acknowledge them. And in a lot of ghost sightings, it's almost like the ghosts are in a world of their own and they're not aware that we're there at all. But it's different at Gettysburg. It's almost as if the residual energy there and the trauma and everything that we surrounded this battle has just supercharged the energy there to allow the ghosts to basically live and walk in our world because they're acknowledging things, they're aware of us, and it's much different than other, not even other battlefields, but just other hauntings across the world, in that it's not just a moment captured in time that keeps repeating itself. It's actually new encounters every single time because the ghosts are changing their behavior based on what, you know, we're doing when we're there.
There's actually terminology for that in the paranormal world, and I believe it's called residual haunting. If it's like energy, like a moment captured in time, but it doesn't seem to be aware of its surroundings or to be able to change its course of action. Like sometimes you'll have a ghost that you see it walk down the stairs at night, and that's all it ever does. It's just a residual haunting, maybe energy captured in time. And then this is more, I think they call it an active haunting, or there's another word for it, but it's where the ghosts are aware, they change their course of action, they can interact with you, like they know you're there.
Right. And in Gettysburg, like I said, is just famous for more of those active hauntings. There's some residual ones as well, but I actually have this. So there's a video I'm going to throw up here, and this is on military.com, but it's from the New York Post. Um, and it shows what appears to be somebody driving around Gettysburg at night and catching some crazy stuff, walking around some cannons there. This is a pretty famous video, again, from the New York Post, hosted by military.com. Let me pull it up here real quick. Yeah, so very clearly two apparitions there. that are walking in front of and behind those cannons. And when I saw that the first time, I thought it was like a distortion or a smudge on the windshield through the vehicle, right? Because that's kind of what it looks like as it just stays in place. But as I watched it a couple more times, I realized that it changes its position not only around those cannons but on the windshield itself. So it's not something that is wrong with the windshield.
And you can see movement. I mean, when you're watching it, you can clearly see something's moving. So that's a
Right. So
pretty
that
cool
that's a
video.
pretty famous like actual video of, you know, some soldiers running around these cannons, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, there's a
But if we move on from, oh, go ahead, Clyde. Sorry.
no, it's all right. Yeah, no, I was just gonna say like we have all these places down where like some things are more haunted, like the Devil's Den or Little Round Top. But apparently, like videos like this, you can be pretty much anywhere on the battlefield and something can happen. So it's always good to keep an eye out if you're there.
Right. And that's the thing about the Gettysburg grounds as a whole is like I can't describe to you how savage the fighting was. And it was everywhere. Like we picked out some of the most prominent spots that people are reporting paranormal activity, but the entire battlefield was ravaged by just bloody, intense, and really intimate combat.
Well, yeah, I mean it was pretty much the largest, most intense battle fought on American soil. And I mean, like we mentioned, the casualties and stuff. So, and it's crazy too. I don't know if it plays into the energy of it, but like I was saying, the fate of a nation hung in the balance pretty much on this one battle. So it's crazy to think of the energy that's probably held on those grounds.
Yeah, and you know, we're talking about apparitions. We'll talk about the wheat field, which is a deceptively peaceful looking field today. But during the battle, it became one of the most savage killing grounds. Like control of it shifted 6 times in a matter of hours. Units marched in, fired, engaged in hand to hand combat, retreated, were replaced by fresh troops who met the same fate. You know, soldiers described this field as being slick with blood, and bodies were so densely packed on stretchers that people had difficulty walking around the field without stepping on the dead or dying. It's just tragically like intense. But this particular spot is famous for its mass apparitions. So we're talking formations of soldiers marching through the field, shadowy figures coming out of the tall grass, mists that take on humanoid shapes before dispersing, and visible footprints in the wet grass in the mornings that didn't come from anywhere. So this is the spot where people are reporting the most concentration of apparitions, especially multiple apparitions at a time when you're talking about formations of soldiers, things of that nature. And visitors often claim when they visit, you know, when they're there, that they're feeling physically unwell and they start experiencing nausea, dizziness, and difficulty breathing. And those symptoms disappear almost immediately after you leave that particular site.
It's almost
So
like you're
a lot of
feeling energy.
the Right. And it kind of aligns strongly with the theory of a trauma echo. It's the idea that environments can store emotional events so potent that they physically affect the visitors that come there. Um, so it's just a spot that was obviously so rife with turmoil that you can physically feel it today.
Wow. Yeah, there's so many areas there that were like the amount of trauma, the amount of horror, I can't imagine. Like even if you talk about like Pickett's charge, like I can't imagine being one of those guys. They had to cross like what was it, like a mile something of open ground under cannon and rifle fire, and they said before they even made it halfway to the Union line, they were already at 50% casualties. So I'd imagine like
It's insane.
a lot of crazy feelings probably when you're standing there, when you're in the wheat field, the Devil's Den. There's also some places that are haunted, reports of being haunted that are kind of not associated with the battle itself, but were where they would take wounded soldiers or where they would take, to store casualties. And one of those places is they called it the Soldiers' Orphanage. And it was an old orphanage that had kind of a bad history in and of itself. And they actually report that the energy is so like terrifying in there that some psychics won't even go in. They stop at the door and they say they can't go in. And there's actually like reports
Oh, no
when people
kidding.
go, yeah, yeah. So people that do go in there report that as soon as you go in, you get this horrid feeling. And there have been reports of people getting tapped. One guy even said he got shoved. And they report that there's also apparitions in there that will appear, like a dark figure will suddenly appear in front of you and then disappear. So that's actually one location where there is a little bit of malevolent energy where people are reporting that it's not the greatest feeling.
Hmm. Yeah, they just don't want you in there for whatever reason.
Yeah, and they've actually even got EVP recordings in there of multiple people talking. So like whether it's older men that maybe were soldiers or something like that, but they also have reports of children talking. So I don't know if if the energy is coming from the battlefield, the soldiers that were there, or if it's coming from maybe the more uh, rough past, even back when it was an orphanage.
Yeah, and that's interesting because you've got an overlap, right, between emotional energy there. Because maybe in a lot of these spots that are famous for hauntings, not all the hauntings are because of a historical event like the Battle of Gettysburg, right? But you have that orphanage, and there's probably some energy there that's held onto that ground until today. So you kind of have like two separate hauntings rolled up into one.
Yeah, I guess you don't know. That's where I guess if you can get a voice recording, you might be able to kind of figure out what it was. Otherwise, yeah, it could be, who knows? Could be from the battle, could be from the terrible past with the orphanage, because they do report that one of the spirits could be Rosa Carmichael, and apparently she was not a very good person to the children that were there. So some people say it could be her trapped in there as a punishment for her crimes.
Yeah, potentially. So take care of your kids. You don't have to worry about being trapped in the Battle of Gettysburg for the rest of your immortal life.
Yeah.
The last place I want to talk about specifically is the Sachs covered bridge, which was kind of a strategic crossing point between locations in Gettysburg. Confederate forces used it to retreat after the battle, actually. Local lore insists that there were three Confederate soldiers that were actually hung inside this bridge for cowardice. And historians say that that's not true, but the legend has persisted for over a century that that is accurate. I don't know, I wasn't there, but it's an interesting story because there's a lot of reports of shadow apparitions and physical sensations when you're in or around this bridge, where you see tall, dark figures standing motionless at the midpoint of the bridge. And there's been people that have reported seeing um, apparitions hanging from the top of the bridge, which seem to line up with the legend of the three Confederates that got hung there. And then again, rapid temperature drops, and then sensations of being touched or like brushed past, as if somebody's walking past you as you're on this bridge. And then there's a photo here that somebody took. Let me pull it up here. On that bridge, where I mean that's a pretty full-bodied apparition there.
Hmm.
But
Yeah, I mean that's a pretty clear apparition. And I know you said that this photo was taken on an older Android phone. So with that being the case, it's a pretty decent photo for the equipment used to take it.
yeah, the photo was released in 2016, and then at that time they said that they'd taken it on an older Android, so who knows how old the picture actually is, but it came out in 2016. But it's a pretty clear, if it's real, it's a pretty clear image of, what appears to be just a soldier of some type. It's impossible to tell based on the uniform because it's, like I said, it's not the best photo, but just standing there. And it appears to have injury on him too.
Hmm.
So just an example of some of the things that are being captured at these locations.
Yeah, that's pretty nuts. And then like, there's also when I was delving into it, just if you like go through Reddit, if you go through all these channels, like the people that go there, there's a lot of people with experiences. Some of them, one of the Reddit users, he said that he was just there during the day and he was walking down a certain road and just all of a sudden soldiers appeared, crossed the road and disappeared right in front of him. And I would
Yeah.
shout him out, but his name was
And speaking of
deleted.
Reddit, I have another. Hmm, I have another image posted from Reddit. This is from Reddit user Sivar211. That was a photo taken over an exposed infrared exposure on his camera. Don't know where it was in Gettysburg, but it was within the boundaries of Gettysburg here. That shows, it looks like two figures like hiding in the trees. They're obviously not physically alive humans, but some sort of apparitions that appear fairly solid.
Yeah, I mean it's a pretty clear image. You can definitely see it.
Which is interesting. I was going to say you can get a lot of different things on Reddit, right? Some of it true, some of it false. But that was a pretty good image. I just wanted to throw up there. You have to make your own conclusion as to whether or not it's accurate or not.
Mhm. Yeah, I actually came across another story from Reddit user Tatan Kowitko, and he posted that he actually talked to an older couple that lives in a house that's like right near the battlefield, so it could have even been part of it during the day. And they said that when they first moved in, they had a child that would tap on the window, and eventually she told him, "Go tell that kid to knock it off. Like, tell him go home." And he opened the door and he looked out and he said, "Well, he must have already run off." And she said, "No, he's still there. He's in the window." And he could not see the kid from outside, but she could see him from inside. And when he came back inside, they looked at him and he looked like he was in like a military uniform when they kind of looked closer, and then he disappeared. But he was saying they thought it was possibly a Civil War drummer boy or something like that.
Hmm. That's
So
interesting.
yeah, interesting stories all
Yeah.
over.
So you take a look at everything that we've talked about, and it just it's very obvious that Gettysburg is a special place, not only in American history, but just in the paranormal world as well, because of all the energy and the emotions and the constant tourism that's there. Like, people go here not only for the historical significance, but a lot of them go because of all the ghost stories. And when you have that many people going to tour something expecting a certain outcome, their kind of emotional engagement with the site reinforces the collective focus in what's happening there and could help to maintain the energy, which is why these hauntings are, consistent and growing, even today.
Hmm. That's awesome. Yeah, we gotta get out there.
But that's all I had to share about Gettysburg. Clyde, did you have any closing thoughts?
No, I mean, obviously, from a paranormal perspective, it's awesome. You get a lot of like a lot of people that saw stuff, so it's not just one person saying like, "Oh, I saw something in a house," or it's not just me sitting here talking about my house is haunted. Like, if you have that many witnesses, it's a pretty clear cut sign that something's definitely going on there.
Yeah. Well, thanks everybody for tuning back in to another episode of Bumping the Mic, and we'll catch you next time.
See you guys.